Theodore Parker was one of the three great Boston-based Unitarian ministers in the mid-19th century, the other two being Ralph Waldo Emerson and William Ellery Channing. Theodore Parker is remembered primarily for two things. One is his passionate advocacy for the abolition of slavery, and the other is a sermon that he once preached called "The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity." Well, the official title of this sermon is Around the World in 15 Minutes, but it might also be called The Particular and the General in Unitarian Universalism. Some of you, I suspect, discovered Unitarian Universalism there at Mount Diablo in Walnut Creek, and it might be tempting, understandably, to think that what you have discovered there defines what you would discover in a Unitarian Universalist church wherever you went, around this country or indeed around the world. But the point of this sermon is to illustrate in very briefly how incredibly diverse are the manifestations of this faith as you discover it around the world. I had a ministry in a beautiful little town in New Hampshire back in the 90s. And as an illustration of that, I mean, here in California, dress codes are very casual. It's more kind of open. We had a member of the congregation who was truly a Boston Brahmin, and she was a summer resident up in New Hampshire. And one swelteringly hot Sunday morning, she came to church and was outraged that the greeter at the door on this stinking hot, humid day was not dressed in a jacket and tie. This to her was conclusive proof that things had gone to the dogs since this barbarian had arrived from Australia. But never mind just within the United States, there are some, but even just within the United States, we have some kind of assumed demographics about ourselves. By and large, for good or for ill, in this country, we tend to be predominantly white, middle class, educated, professional, and that's pretty much true of North Atlantic Unitarian Universalism, be it the States, Canada, the UK, Western Europe. And I grew up in Australia as a Unitarian with those assumptions because the congregation of my upbringing was all of those demographic characteristics. I knew that there was a Unitarian presence in India, in the far northeast corner of India. I knew that since the Second World War, there'd been a presence in the Philippines. And also in Nigeria, there had been a church for more than 100 years, but they were the outlying exceptions. But in the next 15 minutes or so, I want to take you on a whirlwind tour around the world of Unitarian Universalism. If in your travels around the world, you happen to see those golden arches of the McDonald's franchise, you know, if you go into a McDonald's, wherever you are, whether you're in Paris, France, or Paris, Texas, Moscow, Russia, or Moscow, Idaho, you know exactly what you're going to get when you go into a McDonald's. That's also pretty much true for a number of churches, which effectively are franchises operated from a central organization. That is not true with Unitarian Universalism. If you take those golden arches and turn them upside down, you then have a UU. What are you going to find if you see that UU sign and you go in to find out? Well, back in 1995, after 8 years of campaigning, the idea of an international council of Unitarians and Universalists finally took root, And at a conference in Massachusetts, that organization was formed. Beforehand, the group of the half dozen of us or so that were planning the conference were wondering, well, what would it be that would hold us all together, given that there were many differences between some of the organizations? Would just the coincidence of a common name be enough? Well, it proved that it was enough. And the formation of the International Council, ICUU as it is known, was an example of extraordinarily fortuitous timing. 1995, it was just as the internet was getting launched. And so for the first time, people around the world were able to have direct and immediate information about this faith about which they had probably never heard anything previously. As a result, Unitarian or Unitarian Universalist congregations and causes have sprung up in the most unlikely places that do not conform to our demographic conception of ourselves as white and middle class, professional, educated. For example, congregations and causes in Africa, not only the historic causes in South Africa and the one I mentioned in Nigeria, but now in Kenya, in Burundi, in Rwanda, in Congo, Brazzaville. Unitarian Universalist causes and congregations now in South America, in Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Bolivia, in Asia, in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, in Indonesia, and also in other countries in Europe. Not only the traditionally established ones in Transylvania, the countries of Hungary and Romania and the Czech Republic, but now also in the Netherlands, France, Switzerland, Italy, Spain, Finland, Russia, Latvia. All in countries with vastly different social environments, different economic situations, different political backgrounds, some within a country with a strong other religious presence, such as in Italy with the dominance of the Catholic Church, or in South America, the same. Others in post-communist countries where religion was actively persecuted. Some in societies with a tribal culture, as is the case in Central Africa. Extraordinarily different political, social, cultural, historical, personal backgrounds that have given the lie to the idea that we had been telling ourselves for generations, that Unitarian Universalism appealed only to people like us, that we flattered ourselves as middle class, educated, cultured, privileged. There are also widely different versions of how churches govern themselves. For example, you perhaps know that the Hungarian Unitarian Church, which embraces both Hungary and Romania now, they are led by bishops. It used to be that a bishop was appointed for life. Now they are appointed for a fixed term, much the same as the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association in this country is elected. But then there are other denominational groups which are entirely lay-led, which do not have ministers, which do not want to have ministers. And perhaps because of the culture in which they are, in which they find themselves, it's largely like a tribal chief system. And also widely different theologies. Now, we know that we have a broad spectrum of theological belief and conviction just within the North American context, ranging from progressive Christianity to humanism to earth-centered faiths to and everything in between. And often many of us want to pick and choose what we think are the best bits from a host of different traditions. I remember at the conference when ICUU was first founded in 1995, we spent a lot of time debating about what the mission statement of this new organization would be, and we wanted it to reflect our theological diversity. But there was a problem. The Transylvanian representatives were adamant, because of their deep history and commitment to the progressive Christian tradition. They were rightly advocating strongly for that. On the other hand, the German representatives came from a tradition which had started just after the Second World War, which was lay-led and was much more of a philosophical discussion society. How would we ever find common ground between this traditional, somewhat conservative Christian tradition and this philosophical tradition coming from Germany? So we went round and round. We finally came up with the words that one of our purposes was to serve the infinite spirit of life, that being an acceptable euphemism for God. It was acceptable to the Germans that they did not want the word God, but they could live with the infinite spirit of life. When we had finally were near agreement to this, we turned to the bishop of the Transylvanian church and said, Arpad, how will this be for you? He smiled and he said, that's fine. When I go back to Transylvania, I'll just tell them God. And we all laughed, and we recognized that the spirit of wanting to be together was a far stronger force than any divisive forces that might arise because of perceived and real theological differences. I remember also I was heavily involved in the first several years of ICUU. I was the founding president, and in that capacity, I attended and led a number of different training conferences for people who were new to the faith. I went to one in Africa, I went to one in Sri Lanka, I went to three in different parts of Europe. And it was a very challenging time because these people who were new to Unitarian Universalism were excited and inspired. They wanted to know, how do we do it? Come teach us how to do it. Whereas I and the others in the faculty kept trying to impress upon them, we can tell you how we do it in the US, in the UK, Canada, where all of the different faculty members had come from. But we can tell you how we do it where we are, but we can't tell you how to do it, how best to do it where you are, because you need to adjust your theology, your church governance, your practice, your styles in ways which make sense for your situation. And it was always a delicate balance between trying to find the balance between teaching and enabling to learn. There are so many differences around the Unitarian Universalist world, differences of theology, governance, history, practice, and so on. So what is it? What is it that binds us all together? Because throughout all of my experience with ICUU, and I've been more detached from it in later years, but when I was very actively involved in the early years, it was extraordinary when we did come together, just how much we did come together. When we worshipped together, no matter what the language or the style or the content, somehow we were not doing show and tell worship, showing others how we worshipped while the others were spectating. We were all worshipping together. I remember a profound experience at the very beginning of our time together. One of our very first worships together, the leader, and I don't recall who it was, suggested that we each say the words of the prayer of Jesus in our native language. Concurrently, we'd say it all together. Now you might think that that would sound like gibberish and babel. In fact, it was profoundly moving music. So what is it that brings us together? Is it anything more than just the commonality, the chance commonality of a shared name? Well, here's what my observation is. This is what, to me, is universal about this faith, and not just true about the particularities of Walnut Creek or the United States or the United Kingdom or wherever you might happen to be. There are three things that I've discovered are true wherever I've been, and I've now experienced directly and personally Unitarian Universalism in more than 20 countries and on 1, 2, 4, 5 continents. And those universal truths are these. There are three. One is, wherever we are, we respect and uphold the primacy of the individual, the ultimate primacy of the individual in matters of faith. Each of us, wherever we are, is not only permitted, but encouraged and exhorted to find those truths which work for us, to not espouse a faith simply because somebody else is telling us we should or we must. The second universal truth is that we want to do that in company of like-minded spirits. That wherever we are not content to seek our own truths isolated, alone, but we want to come together and be together as a congregation. That we are a gathered community, that we believe truly that whatever our individual truth is, we are enlarged and enhanced by being in the company of others whose individual truths might be different from ours in the particulars, but that together in conversation and collaboration, we are each and all enriched and enlarged. And the third universal truth is that we are committed to the world, that we are not a faith that secretes itself away, that hides from the world, which thinks the world is secular and the place of sin, but that part of our faith is the imperative that we be involved in the world. I remember when I was in Africa, in Kenya, at a training conference there, and these young, new UUs from Kenya who were on fire about what they had just discovered, and who, poor though they were committing 20% and more of their income to the church, that the church might then be actively involved in doing emergency crisis assistance to people in the community beyond themselves. It was a sobering and inspiring lesson to see such passionate commitment to their understanding of their obligation to the world. So if you do see those upturned golden arches in your travels around the United States, North America, South America, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Asia, Africa, wherever you are, if you do see those upturned golden arches and you think, a UU church, I'll go and see what I can find out there. What you will discover likely will be very, very different from what you know and love and cherish at Mount Diablo. And that is both a great strength that we enable such diversity, and it's also something of a weakness because we are not monochrome, we're not uniform in the way we manifest ourselves. And it is true that some people get deeply attached to one congregation and then they move house to another state perhaps, find a UU church, and it's nothing like what they were hoping for or expecting. But here we are, as individuals, so different, each of us. As congregations, so different, each of us. As national groupings, so different, each of us. And yet, warmly embracing each other, lighting the chalice of our faith, that our vision may be illumined, our fellowship encouraged, and our commitment to peace and justice and the life of the Spirit around the world may be enkindled. So may it be for us all. Amen.